Hey, okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about logic models. The simplest way to think about a logic model for me is that it's just a picture of the agency, what their resources are, what their services are, and what the outcomes are. And so it's one piece of paper like this. You've got some examples in your readings because there's so much going on in a program. To have it in one place on one piece of paper can be really helpful, and sometimes it might need to be two. It really depends on what you're doing. A lot of the times for what we're doing in classes, I'm having you focus on a particular aspect of the agency. So you might be describing the anger management program you work in at your agency. So in that case, you might actually have your title, instead of the agency, it might be anger management program, and then go from there. So again, it depends on what your goal is. A lot of times for what we're doing, we want to assess what's working or not working in a program, and so to have on one piece of paper, here are our resources, here are the services we're providing, here are the outcomes. And maybe it's what we hope is going to happen, and we find out it's not happening, and so we need to think about what to do different. When you're seeking funding, a lot of times funders like to see these logic models. The Kellogg Foundation has got a document. I think I've got a link for you there. You can look at, they've done a lot with logic models, and of course you have some readings. So it's kind of what a logic model is. It's a description of the agency, one page. And again, you can use it for a lot of different purposes. So for us, a lot of times we're looking to see just how things are flowing, but you can also use it. You might develop it with the idea of going to show potential funders or the community, here's what we're doing, or here's where we're going. And in fact, to collect information for your logic model, a lot of times I'm just having you talk to your field instructor or one person at the agency. But in reality, to develop a really comprehensive logic model, you would need to talk to more than one person. So, file that away, but a lot of times for our purposes, talking to one person is okay. I mean, you might want to talk to people that are volunteers at the agency, administrators, actually service providers within the agency, so people who are on the front lines as well as administration. But again, for us, a lot of times you're talking to one person. This is a class. You don't have you don't have the luxury of having as much time. But still, let's see. Okay, I told you agency versus program. So again, you might be doing it for the entire agency or just for the anger management program. So again, it depends on your purpose. So a lot of times for class, like I said, we're probably focusing on the program. So now as far as the structure, resources, that's generally the first column. And again, if you look at some of the different readings and some of the handouts I've given you, the slides, these will look different depending on the program. So like with individuals, one logic model does not fit all. So some of it is figuring out what you need to communicate. But generally that first column is going to be your resources. And I like how Royce and the Royce textbook talks about, and it's figure 5 when it's on page 110. They give you a template. And it says, in order to accomplish our set of activities, we will need the following. And so again, those are resources. So how does that agency or that program run? There may be a board of directors. There could be foundation funding. There could be city funding. A lot of times volunteers are really important. Staff is a resource as well, and the clients can be. So thinking about what all those things are. And so that's why it's really important to talk to other people in the agency. You are not the expert, and that's beauty. You don't have to be, but you're going to collect that information. And so those are your resources. That's your first column. The second one, everywhere I see it called activities. Really, these are what are the services that are provided. So again, I kind of like the Royce example. In order to accomplish our objectives for the program, we need to do these activities. And so again, these are services. So it could be community outreach. It could be individual therapy. It could be what are the services that that agency or that program is specifically providing. And that is what goes here. Now, for us, again, I've given you a template, I think, that says staff activities. I think it'd be just fine if you put services there, because to me that's a little clearer. That's up to you. And then that next column, I've seen it called a couple of different things. I've seen it called program processes or program outputs. But basically what this third column is are the specific details about your services. So it could be that you're saying your service is community outreach, and the specific program process or outcome, whichever you want to call it, whichever makes more sense to you, would be distributing 100 flyers. So that's a very specific information about what community outreach was. Or it might be, 3 training sessions during the quarter. So again, this third column, details about what your services are. And then the last 2 to 3 columns are generally, what are your anticipated outcomes? What are the anticipated outcomes for the program? So if you look at some of the different examples I've given you, you can kind of see. I tend to think about this being that first column, the immediate outcomes might be while the client is in the program, or maybe right as it ends if it's an anger management course, maybe it's at the end of 6 weeks. What are our immediate outcomes? What are the intermediate outcomes? So what do you hope things are going to look like, for example, for that client right after the program is finished, 6 months down the road, a year down the road? And again, some of that depends on what the agency you're developing this for, what they look like, and kind of whether that makes sense to have 3 time points or maybe just 2, longer term outcomes. So there are a number of examples. Let me see in some of the notes I've given you. Well, in the template I gave you, blah, blah, blah. Where the hell did it go? Oh, should you not say hell in your video? Yeah, I don't think it matters. Okay, so it could be, 6 months down the road, and then, longer term, it could be a year, it could be, I don't know, way into the future. And it could be also that some of these longer term impacts might not be just directly for the client, but it could be the community at large. So that's also something to think about. So that's really your quick and dirty lecture on logic models. I've given you a few different things to look at, and hopefully that helps. Okay.